Hello, I'd like to say a very warm welcome to you in CLIL at India. My name is David Marsh, and it's a pleasure and an honor for me to say a few words to contribute to your conference, which is on a project which is extremely exciting and extremely interesting, and one that I hope we will learn a lot more about over the next few years. The focus of teaching through an additional language, be it Punjabi, be it Hindi, Tamil, English, leads us to say, well, how are we going to do it? And the how are we going to do it leads us to the issue of, is it going to be business as usual in the schools? Are we going to train the teachers and everything will, miraculously change? Or are we going to have to look at systemic change? And when I look back at the last 25 years, when we have really focused on developing CLIL solutions in Europe, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America increasingly, even in Africa in the last 5 years, we've had to say, actually, teacher education requires a major rethinking of what it means to be a teacher. Many of us who go into teaching do so because we love giving, we love children, and we want to make a difference. And when we go into teaching, no matter how good our teacher training is, very often we teach the way we were taught. And I think this is one major reason why, if we want to change something, and with CLIL we really have an opportunity to do that, then we need to really think, how can we break the status quo of how teachers teach and how teachers think? Is it to take the young teachers who are in pre-service education? Is it to take the older or more experienced teachers who are in service education? Is it to take both at the same time and put them in training programs? Our experience has been quite painful and quite expensive with respect to teacher education for CLIL. When we started developing schools and developing teachers, we did have teacher training courses. We had courses which would last about 40 to 50 hours of work, perhaps in that time about 30 hours of contact time. We thought they were good, we thought they were hands-on, and we did the best we could in various universities and colleges across Europe. But actually, the impact that training had was disappointing. And that's what I mean by painful, because for all the time and investment put into the teacher education on the short courses, the returns were not good, because within 3 months, within 6 months, those teachers had gone back to the status quo. They'd gone back to what they were doing before. So then we started thinking, well, it is a profound change to use CLIL methodologies. If you are a language teacher, if you are a content teacher, it does actually require not so much a new philosophy, but it requires a confidence, and it requires a specific skill set, which is to enhance the linguistic scaffolding, to enhance the cognitive scaffolding, and to be fully in tune with how those students are thinking when you're asking them to learn topic X, Y, and Z in another language. And in order to do that, what we found was, if we could put the teacher training into the school, our success rate was much higher. In other words, the modular approach that we have adopted now, and which we're using now increasingly, involves a high degree, it involves training a change agent to be in the school. It involves a group of teachers working with that person, with an external tutor, and that can be an online relationship, working for about 1 year on slowly introducing, discovering, developing, and archiving the practices which suit this grade, these children in this region, in this language. That, as a teacher development process, sounds easy to do, and it is, and it should be. But systemically, our universities or our organizations often prevent this kind of innovative way of handling professional development. But the point that we've come to is this: if we want to develop CLIL, it's much more than learning a few techniques. It's much more than learning the language that I'm planning to teach in. It is more about learning to become a professional in a holistic way as myself, and in a systemic way working with other professionals in my school. Once that is achieved, the results are so good that I don't think there's any going back. It's like once you find the fine spice, you're not going to go back to using the cheap old stuff that you might find in a supermarket in a country like the UK. So I think the issue here is one of systemic change. So as educators now in this project, my advice would be, let's think innovatively about how this process could be developed within the schools, and let's make sure that there aren't unforeseen or disguised gatekeepers that will actually block their process wittingly or unwittingly and prevent good CLIL practice from developing in the school. The other thing that we have been looking at very carefully are the students. Now, throughout India, as throughout other major countries and throughout major regions, we can see that young people are changing. I'm sure every generation has said, oh, young people, they're not the same as they used to be. But really the change in the last 10 years is exponential in terms of the impact of digital devices on the minds and brains of young people in our societies. It's an incredible change in certain metropolitan regions. For example, even in countries which have a relatively difficult financial constraints, there is a very, very high level of digital equipment ownership and internet access. It's a very, very high. So what seems to be happening now is that the age at which young people are using digital devices is dropping radically. But most interestingly, the amount of time that they are online, that they are gaming, that they're using this equipment is going up very, very high as 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And once you start hitting 50 hours a week, you're talking about serious time. So what is that doing? Well, we are looking very closely, especially at the age group 15 to 20, and what we're seeing is that those young people are becoming really highly restless with conventional teaching, with teaching that is perhaps a little bit what I'm doing now, which is talking too much. They're becoming very restless. This is very interesting for us with teacher education because when we introduce those content teachers, pre-service doing practicums or in-service working with their own students. Those teachers see very quickly that the methods they are using, the CLIL methods, the interactive methods, the dialogic methods, the group-based learning by construction methods, they see how well the students react. They see how well they respond. And that joy of seeing students respond so well, so quickly, drives them to say, actually, yes, you know, this is not another course. I've done lots of courses. This is actually a course of action that will change my professional life. So there we have it. Teacher education in CLIL can be very successful. It doesn't necessarily have to be time heavy. It doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, but it needs to be embedded into the daily reality of the teachers that we're working with, and it needs to link to something very, very significant, which is this. This is not just language learning. It's not just a new fashion, a new fad. It's actually an example of educational innovation which is needed for this period of time in the history of the world. It fits the period of the time. 25 years ago, when the researchers that I had the honor and privilege of working with, who were looking at all these fantastic language learning methods, saying, is there something we can take from these to teach genuine content through English? We did not know then that 25 years later these methods would be so utterly relevant and suitable because of the power of the digital age. Some thoughts here from Finland, where I'm based, and they are thoughts which I'd like to convey to you, and I really do wish you a wonderful conference, and I hope very much that we will have contact again soon in the future. Thank you and goodbye.